We're ready now. It's recording. It is July 5th. We just had our fun 4th of July thing, and I wanted to talk to you about, just ask you some questions from when you were growing up, and some stories that we've heard often, but we've never, gotten them down on record or anything. But I have some really basic questions before I start to get into the fun ones, so that you're not even going to need for a little while.
Oh.
But I would like you to give me your complete full birth name.
Lois, Leila, Leila, Berkey.
And do you remember, what today is, okay, do you remember, obviously you'll remember the date you were born. That's May 9th, correct?
1926.
And do you remember the time you were born?
No,
you know?
I don't think I do.
Was it in the morning or the afternoon? Do you know that?
I think it was on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
There was a mulberry tree outside Grandma's window, my mother's window,
Mm-hmm.
that was just leafing out.
Okay.
And she said she watched it leaf out because they always stayed in bed for a couple of weeks after they had a baby. They weren't allowed to get up because it was just the way they did it.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Then when I was 60 years old, then Aunt Lola gave me a mulberry tree.
Uh-huh.
And in the springtime, I look at it and I see when the leaves are coming out. And when they're May 9th, they're generally pretty well out.
How neat. So was it do you remember your mom saying that it was in the morning that you were born, or late at night? Or...
I could maybe ask my brother, oldest brother, but I don't remember.
Okay.
Okay, he sees to know a lot more about things like that.
And you were born where?
Shickley, Nebraska.
S-H-I-C-K?
S-H-I-C-K-L-E-Y. And I do have a picture of that somewhere.
Well, good. How big were you when you were born? Do you...
No, I don't know that
don't
either.
know. Did you have any hair?
According to the pictures, I didn't have very much.
Okay. No.
But when I was 3 years old, or right around 3 years old, I had diphtheria and scarlet fever, and lost all my hair.
Oh, she's fine. You can go. Why don't you go see what her problem is? No, she's down in the toy room, in the family room with the toys. You can go play with her. So
But anyway, my hair all came out, and then they grew back, kind of stringy-like. And then my grandma always made quite a few comments on how she'd have to make a little tiny braid here to keep them out of my face, and then into the next one and into the last one. So she was determined to have me looking good.
presentable.
Right, presentable.
What was your eye color at birth? Do you remember?
Brown.
Brown. And were you named after anyone?
Not that I know of. Leila, I had a cousin that just a little, I don't know, 5, 6 years older than I that was Leila.
Okay.
And I would imagine, knowing the stories of how they often helped each other, that they used each other's children's names.
Mm-hmm. What was your mother's full name?
Katie Elizabeth Troyer.
And what was her date of and place of birth?
November 19th, 1895. And her place of birth was Goner, Nebraska.
Would that be spelled G-O-N-E-R?
G-O-E-H-N-E-R, I think. It's in some of our history here,
Okay.
and it can be corrected if
Oh, yeah.
I'm wrong.
And your father's full name?
Hammond William Berkey.
And his date and place of birth?
His date was August 23rd, 1893. He was born in Oberlin, Kansas.
Overland.
Ober. O-B-E-R-L-I-N. You're on Kent.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Okay, now starting with your oldest sibling, what were I'd like to know names, dates, and places of birth.
Okay. Would you like to know a little bit more about Grandpa? My dad, as he was in a covered wagon going to Beamer, Nebraska, when he was 1 year old.
Wow.
He moved from Overland, Kansas to Beamer, Nebraska. I think there's another name that they live close to, but anyway. Dale's birthday is November 11th, 1918.
Thank you, Glenn.
It was Armistice Day of the First World War.
Armistice Day.
Grandma had heard the trains whistle and bells, church bells.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
And
What's Dale's full name?
Dale Ammon. Berkey.
And he was born in Nebraska.
Ship. I hope I'm right about this.
That's all right. And he married.
Ruth Gerig, which is Grandpa's sister.
That's right. Do you know Ruth's middle name?
I should.
It's okay if you don't.
Okay. Ruth.
And then you say.
No, I don't remember it right now.
Okay. And your next sibling?
Glenn Ira.
And he was born in Shickley as well?
Mm-hmm.
On what day?
October 23rd. Would have been 1920. October 23rd? No. I'll have to correct
You know
that.
what?
It's in there, huh?
Grab this.
That or else, I hope that's in there.
It is.
It is?
Yeah, I happened to see it.
Oh, well, okay.
Well, those must be her siblings.
Mhm.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. No, she doesn't have the dates. She doesn't have the date of the children on. I can get them.
Really?
You want to just
Huh.
see? She was just. Do you want to turn it off
Sure.
and then I'll go get it?
Yeah, that would be,
Actually, Lester Roy,
was before.
the very first baby that Grandma had,
Okay.
was Lester. It says Lester Roy. I was thinking it was Lester Ray, but 2/21/1917, and died at 8/13/1917 in a car accident.
And
Dale Ammon then.
and he would have been born in Shickley?
Lester was, yes,
Okay.
at home in a house, not in a hospital.
I kind of figured it probably wasn't at a hospital. Okay.
Dale Ammon, and he was born 11/11/1918.
Okay.
And then Ruth Helen Gerig.
Oh, Ruth.
Helen is the middle name.
All right.
Now, you don't need their marriages, do you?
No.
Okay, then Glenn Ira was, interesting. She must have missed that. 10/23.
10/23.
Not 11. 10/23/1920.
Oh, okay, you go play with Sissy. Mommy's talking to Great Grandma. I know. But there you go. And he
Okay.
was born in Shickley, and he married.
Irma Louise Kennel.
Oh, yeah. She was a kennel.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, after Glenn.
Okay, then.
Wait, Grandma.
What, honey?
What?
That's just to hang. That's to hang quilts, honey.
Where is it?
Well, it's a quilt hanger. Uncle Lynn made it for me.
Yeah.
Glenn.
Oh.
Okay, we've got Glenn.
Mm-hmm. After Glenn, it was.
And then it is Lola. And Not forget that.
That's Ryan.
Lola Fern Berkey.
Okay.
Ken, October 13th, 1922.
Okay. And she married
She married Morris Knopfziger. And then-
M-O-R-R-I-S or M-U?
Morris. And then later, Bill Mullet.
See everybody?
William H.
Everybody here up there. We need to go to the picnic. My paw!
Okay.
Then Lois Leida. 5926.
And was Lola also born in Chickley?
Yes. No, excuse me. Clyde Park, Montana.
Oh. So there was a move in there between...
There was a move with a, what did they call those train cars? Immigrant car.
Really?
Uh-huh.
And so...
They moved to Clyde Park because there was a few other, mother's sister, Lena, her family was there.
That's
Uh-huh.
mine. Mine.
You know, other families they knew.
Just a second.
Say in the other one about Grandma's children. There's Ray comes in after me, I think.
Maybe.
And somehow or other, see, these people who do these, they leave out some of those
That didn't live.
that
Yeah.
didn't live.
They don't. Lester, Dale, Glenn, Lola, Lois, Ray, Faye, Ella, and Stella.
Okay.
So...
And Ray's birth, I'm not familiar with what I can say to when Ray was born. I have it somewhere.
What was Ray's first full name?
Ray Eldon.
Okay, and you, now, back to you. So, how long did they live in Clyde Park, Montana before they moved back to Chickley? Because you were born in Chickley in 26, so there was
Right.
4 years between you, Lola, and you. If she was born in 22...
But they moved when Glenn was a baby, so they moved in 1920 sometime.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I was born in 26,
Right.
but I was on the way I was born soon after they got to Chickley.
Okay. And so Ray was also born in...
Ray was born in Chickley, Nebraska.
and
But
what was it? You can't remember his birthday?
I don't remember his birthday, but I can look it up for you.
Okay. And when did he... Now, he died...
He was just about 18 months old. We had scarlet fever and diphtheria, and they said neither one of us was going to live. And he
That's
died. And they were quarantined.
Are there any pictures of him at all?
Uh-huh. We do have some pictures.
Well, that would be neat. I discovered.
Well, now, Faye comes in
Uh-huh.
March the 27th, 1932. And she was
March.
born in Chickley.
27, 19...
32.
And...
She married.
Chickley. She married...
Howard Dwayne Clausen. And it's D-W-A-Y-N-E. C-L-A-A and 2 S's and E-N.
Oh.
C-L-A-A-S-S-E-N.
And what's Faye's middle name?
Ellen.
And after Faye came...
Stella. No, Ella May. And there again, I do not know her birth date right now.
Was it M-A-E or M-A-Y? Do you
I would
remember?
say it was M-A-Y, but I don't know for sure. I did get I was in the cemetery and I could have seen it, but I don't recall now what it was.
And was she born in Chickley as well?
Yes. Ella May was stillborn.
Okay.
She was being born when we come home from school and we were sent to the neighbors. And then when we came back, then Dad showed us just a perfectly sweet-looking baby laying
Was
on the
that-
bed.
And how was that for him? Was that...
I would think it was difficult. It was difficult.
Do you remember him showing
He took
any
us
emotion?
all into the bedroom and said, "We want to show you." so it was hard because they had so many. I guess I always wondered why Grandma and Mother were always talking about death and dying.
Mm-hmm.
But Grandma had an 18-year-old daughter, Ellen,
Mm-hmm.
who worked for Mother for her first baby. And there was measles going around,
Mhm.
and they told her that she shouldn't go to a party. Grandpa told her not to go, and she went anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And she contacted measles and died at 18. And another uncle, Ira, he had appendicitis, and they didn't get to a doctor, and he died at the age of 21.
Mm.
And then they
Wow.
had another one, and I mean, no wonder Grandma was talking about death and dying with Mother when all this took place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, these are good stories. Don't feel like you need to stop.
And then Stella was the next. Stella Ruth. 9/6/1936.
September 6, 1936. And she married
Christian D. Shantz.
And was she born in Shickley as well?
Yes.
So pretty much everyone except for Lola.
Right.
Where were you married?
We were married at the Fairview Mennonite Church in Albany, Oregon, June the 12th, 1947, 6 o'clock in the evening,
1947,
1947.
6 p.m. Okay, and this is a strange question, but it's down here, and so it's what is your social security number?
I'd have to go get it. I don't
That's
know it by
okay.
memory.
That's all right. Those of us
It's in my
younger
purse.
people.
It's in
Oh,
there. You know
yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
I know
We
my
have to know.
driver's license, 391126, but I don't know my social security.
391126.
Uh-huh.
And Grandpa's full name.
Irvin Leroy Gerig.
Where is he, by the way?
Outside.
And
Unless he came in.
what? And his birthday is
August 17th, 1920.
And where was he born?
Albany, Oregon, out in the country, in a house. It was called the Burkhart Place. That's
And-
where
Go ahead.
Sitzmans are living now. I mean, Mark's parents.
Really? Mark and Stacy. Mark. Okay. What are some special things about your wedding that you can remember?
Oh, that's interesting. First of all, because my uncle, in preparation for the wedding, my uncle, Amos Roth, told me, you're not going to have one of those worldly dresses, are you? And that was a long white dress, and that's what I wanted. It wasn't because my parents told me I couldn't, but because I promised him years before we got married that no, I wouldn't have anything, because I wanted to be in favor in his eyes.
Uh-huh.
And so I had gotten a suit, and Grandpa and I, we had suits as much alike as we could get.
Uh-huh.
But then the wedding, at that time, they weren't allowed any kind of ornaments, like wearing of flowers. Corsages was the thing that they were. And I knew I couldn't wear any. And so I just had a hanky.
Okay.
But afterwards, my dad, in the afternoon before we went, I must have told him I wanted some flowers. I wished I could have had some. And he says, well, you could have carried them. But I didn't.
Well, it's nice to know before you get
And
married.
Grandpa Gerig didn't have any telephone, so I couldn't tell Daddy or Grandpa.
So by Grandpa Gerig, do you mean?
Your grandpa, father, Chris C.C.,
Okay.
didn't have any.
So you couldn't call
I couldn't call.
my Grandpa Irvin
Right.
to say, please bring me some flowers
Right.
to carry.
And
Oh.
we had also, the day of our wedding, we had moved from the country into this house, and I didn't want anybody to know that, you know, we were still painting the week of the wedding, painting on the interior. And the morning of our wedding, my dad went and painted in the dinette table and benches. I don't know how he thought that would dry before 6 o'clock, fresh paint. So instead, he had wiped it all off with gas, washed it all off. So all the grains in the plywood, he was always proud of that afterwards. He says, you know, it looks pretty this way.
Leave it to Dad.
Right. So anyway, Aunt Lola came in and made lots of meatloaf, and people out here weren't used to coming for a meal, and so a lot of them had eaten. But we had it in our home, the reception in our home. But P.R. Kennel, the bishop at Salem Mennonite Church in Nebraska, performed the ceremony.
P.R. Kennel?
Peter, P.R. Kennel. He was out here for his son's wedding. And we walked down the aisle together. It isn't that we had one set of a bridesmaid and groomsmen, which was Clarence Gerig and June Sherfy.
You didn't have one of your sisters?
No.
June Sherfy? What schools did you attend, and where were they?
District 93 in Shipley, Nebraska. All 8th grade.
93. And so that was the name of the school? And you graduated at 8th grade and didn't go on, is that
I
correct?
didn't go on.
And why was that?
Nobody of our community went on to high school at that time. We were farm people. And we were needed on the farm. But we didn't even want to go. It sounds strange now, but...
No, I can think of reasons not to go on to school.
But the girls, the church girls and like that, we just didn't desire to go. In my mind, it was those that were... how would you say, a little bit out on the edges that went to high school and thought they were somebody.
That didn't maybe want to settle down?
Right, could be.
Now, was this a one-room schoolhouse?
Yes.
And was it like, I think of the Little House on the Prairie stories. So was this like out in a field, or... Yes. Was this right along a road?
It was along a road. It was only about the length of our house now to the mailbox. Others had 2 miles, a mile and a half to walk. But we lived close by. We had a merry-go-round and a windmill, and we had to carry the water. And the teachers started the fires, one stove in the middle of us. So we always went home for dinner.
So at lunchtime, you went home?
We went home. But it was really a treat to get to take it. And sometimes on a very, very stormy blizzard day, my dad would bring us some soup. And those are really special times.
Really? What was your favorite type of soup that he would bring?
You know, I don't know. They made a lot of potato soup.
We had stretched a long way.
Right, exactly. We did once in a while, the teacher would have a big metal dishpan on the stove, and some of the students would bring their pint jars full of food and put it in that hot water, so they'd have a hot dinner.
Really?
At noon.
That was going to be one of my questions, was did people ever warm their food up?
In that way.
Wow.
And then we'd have a picnic at the end of the time, and we went to an old empty house setting for a wiener roast in the springtime when the lilacs bloomed.
I love lilacs.
And that was where my mother and dad's house was, where their first baby was born. It just happened to be that way, that it was in the area.
That's neat. Now, I really don't expect that there's any answer to this next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. since you didn't go to college, obviously you probably wouldn't have gotten any degrees or anything like that. But did you get any honors in school, or were you
Yes.
involved? Okay, tell me about some of those.
Well, I did in this way. I have them in my 1938 scrapbook. I could, you could read them,
Uh-huh.
and you can.
But what do you remember? What are
I
some...
remember high jumping,
Really?
and I remember practicing high jumping. And we went to Geneva, Nebraska, as a school, and we competed with other schools, and I got something for high jumping.
Now, what did they consider high jumping?
Well, I had a bamboo,
Uh-huh.
piece of bamboo that I would put somewhere and
Uh-huh.
practice at home. And I don't know, 4, 5, 6 feet, whatever. You'd run and jump over that, and it was always fixed so that in case you hit it, you just,
It would fall off.
yeah, right.
Now, so you like jumped with your back over the top of it and everything?
Mhm.
I never knew you were a high jumper. I'm so impressed.
And then,
Who would have guessed?
let's see.
5 or 6 feet, Grandma. That's a...
Well, that's what I recall.
That's...
It may not have been quite that way.
Any other ones that you can think of?
Well, reading and math and like that, I
Uh-huh.
remember getting special ribbons or something like that for that.
Uh-huh.
I did go to a 6-week Bible term in Heston College in Kansas
Uh-huh.
at 16, at age
Really?
16. So that was a plus.
This
And I
was-
wanted to stay for the second semester, but I really was starting to get into it and was glad that I could study and start learning something, but then I didn't think my folks could afford it,
Uh-huh.
and yet I wanted to bad enough, and my dad says, well, you can stay. But when it came time that all the friends I had there were leaving, then I called him and I said, I want to come home. And I knew then I would be his, quote, hired man in the field.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized I wasn't going to complain because he had given me that choice,
Mm-hmm.
and choice was important.
Yeah. That's true. Were you ever involved in any types of organizations, like at church or civic
And when I was a
organizations?
child.
Really? What were you?
Well, I mean, you mean when I was a child?
Any time in your life.
I went to the first Bible school that they ever had at
Which?
age 15.
At Fairview?
No, at Salem Mennonite at Chickley.
First Bible school.
But in church period, I was Bible school teacher, Sunday school teacher. We had food committees,
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
You were busy.
I think so.
Okay, I'd like to know the places that you've lived. I want you to start with where you're at now, and trace it back to your first home, if it's...
Okay, we lived here at the Burkhardt Place, Bella and Burl Burkhardt's place, for 42 years. We moved in 1960. No, excuse me. It was 1961 because Lynn was a year old.
Okay.
And then backwards, we lived at the Ehrlich place, the Hugo Ehrlich place, for 10 years.
And so that would have been
From
1951 to 1961?
Let's see. Possibly. I guess I can go the other direction better. We lived in town for 4 years. We were married in 47. We lived in this little garage house.
Right around the corner from Andrea's house, right?
And that was built for a garage, and we finished it off on the inside
Mm-hmm.
for the first year's rent.
Wow.
And then we, 2 years later, in 49, your mother was born, Carolyn. And she was 2 years old, almost 2 years old then when we moved out to the Ehrlich place.
Okay.
And then Lauren was born in 1951. And I had to have the windows all washed upstairs and downstairs, inside and outside, before Lauren was born, and I was pregnant with him, and I climbed out the upstairs window onto the porch roof in the fall when he was born in October, and I could hardly get through the window. But it had to be done.
Leave it to you.
It had to be
I'd
done.
go, you know,
I
they
did.
could wait.
It could wait. It could have waited, but I thought at that time that was important.
So you said that you lived in the garage house from 1947 to 51 then, roughly.
No, 49, 50, 51. I guess probably so. 50 or
like-
51. The late,
Very early
not-
50s.
yeah,
Okay.
it would have been probably.
But you moved there right when you got married. That's where it.
Mhm.
Okay. And
We had to live with my folks for a few months because
kind of like we had to live here
Yes, really.
until the house was ready to move in, right?
Right, and then we started out with a 3-burner kerosene stove, which was my mother-in-law's, and I painted it, and orange crates for cupboards, till we had built the cupboards.
Wow. That's neat.
We still have the old refrigerator we got. It was super deluxe, because at that time, the war years, you couldn't get your appliances,
Uh-huh.
and this was a deluxe model of Norge, N-O-R-G-E,
Uh-huh.
refrigerator, and still out in the grain bin in the barn, rusty.
Does it work?
I don't know.
I'm just making
Please, this is too much of a good thing.
I know. Okay. Before you lived with your parents, before you and Grandpa lived with your parents, where did you guys live?
Oh,
Your family.
we lived in Shickley and on the birthplace, and then they lived what they called the Anderson place for, I don't know, Brother Dale told me. And then from the Anderson place, we moved to the Goodhue place, which is where I grew up.
Okay, you're going a little fast. So,
Goodhue is G-O-O-D.
what was the first place that you said?
Well, it was just there in town, is where I
Okay.
was born.
In town. Let's see. It wasn't in the country.
And then in the country at the Anderson place.
Okay.
And then from there we went to the Goodhue place.
And that would be Goodh.
UE.
Okay. And that's where you grew. For,
17 years. I was very fortunate, I always thought, because we stayed there, and that's my childhood memories.
yeah, Lola would have had just a little bit of the moving,
Right.
didn't she? And
Then
then,
in we lived on the Goodhue place, and when my brother got married in 42 or so,
Mhm.
Uncle Glenn,
hmm
then we moved to an empty house that was on the place and let him live in the home place.
oh,
And this empty house had been used as a granary.
oh my, I bet you had mice.
Oh yes, we had mice, we had rats.
Yuck.
And so there was only 2 bedrooms, and I decided there was a stairway to the attic. So I thought, well, I need to sleep upstairs because there was at least 4 years. I was grown up, I
Mhm.
thought.
Of course.
And so I made myself...
You were how old? 17?
Actually, oh dear, that's a hard question. I don't know. Just
Roughly.
17 maybe, but between, 15 and 17 somewhere.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, you were grown up.
I was. And then I made myself a bedroom up there with cardboard boxes, and wallpapered it. And they just had little windows that
Uh-huh.
were off of the floor, just like the one in the east bedroom, or the boys' bedroom.
Uh-huh.
Well, and then that was kind of what I thought was a nice bedroom. Well, and we never had electricity, so I would carry my lamp up there one night. When I carried it up there and blew out the lamp and went to bed, a rat bit my ear. And I was just petrified. So I stuck my head underneath
The covers. Did you sleep with your head under the covers from then on?
I don't know.
Yuck.
I don't know.
Oh,
It just
yeah.
kind of, it was impressive.
Did you scream?
I don't know. I don't even
Do
know.
you remember if your dad came up hearing any?
But my ear got twice to 3 times as big as it's supposed to be. We never went to a doctor.
Can you
because
imagine?
They didn't go to doctors then, like we do today.
Yeah. But,
So.
I mean,
Yeah.
you could have died of a rat bite.
Right.
Yuck.
Right.
So, and so were you living in the granary when did the move to Albany come in?
About 1944.
And why?
We went from 40 to 44. We went to Albany, Oregon, many times. I think my dad wanted to be closer to his folks.
Okay, and
His
they were.
mother was out here, but his father had passed away.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
And so in 44, then they decided to move
To
out.
stay.
Okay.
Actually, we didn't. I really didn't hardly. It was during the war, and we were gas was rationed,
Uh huh.
and tires and all that. And so when we made a trip out here, my parents went back there, and never moved the furniture or anything. They just took the things they wanted and left the empty house and the furniture in it.
You're kidding.
And then when they finally went back out there, I guess the furniture kind of fell apart or something, and some of it was burned because brother Glenn lived there, and they didn't want it all. So what they wanted, they took. But I know that Grandma cried because my mother cried because she said she could hardly stand it that some of those things were destroyed.
Yeah.
But my Aunt Fern said many times she was the youngest, and she had told me years later, she said, when Mother's gone, I want to be your mother. And so she was a very dear aunt. And she said when she'd get lonesome, then she'd stop in at that empty house, and the dishpan was still in the dry sink with a dish rag over it.
Wow.
So that's kind of different little things. They're not all that important, I guess.
Oh, they are. Now, when your family moved to Albany, that's when they lived on Main Street. That was the first home that they. Wow. And that was.
No, excuse me. We lived when they moved to Albany. He built a house in Sweet Home, and we lived up there, and it still stands. We used to live in empty houses when we'd come out for maybe 3 months at a time.
Uh huh.
There was an empty house
Kind
here
of
or
like
there, and we
squatters.
right. And then we came to the case. Let's see, from Sweet Home, we went to the Case place where Paul and Merlin Stutzman live today.
Okay.
No, where they built the house, they don't live today. They built a new one, smaller one, but their son lives there.
Oh. Okay.
And then from the Case place, we moved into town on South Main.
Okay.
But it's not the one Andrea. There's about 3 or 4 houses down.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
It's not the one that Andrea lives in
Uh-huh.
right now.
That was built in 1960.
Okay.
They lived there, then they lived in the corner house,
Uh huh.
just north of Andrea's. And then they moved to this one.
Huh. Okay.
You know, pretty soon I'm going to have to make dinner.
Okay. You just tell me when we need to start.
Oh, wow.
What? Good job. Can you make some more?
Yeah.
Where did you have jobs?
Well, when we come out to Oregon then, I had at a turkey plant. I worked there for, a couple of years, I suppose. However, maybe just, I guess what is confusing in my mind right now. I could look at my diaries, but the different times we moved out here from Sweet Home to the different places, then I worked at a turkey plant, and that's where they butchered chickens, and I would feather them. But then at the very last, before I got married, I was working at a frozen food place, a cannery, and I was the labeling machine.
Do you remember the name of the frozen food company?
I do, but I don't. I mean, right now I can't think of it, but I can look it up.
That's okay.
It was,
Where was it? Was it here in Albany?
yes.
Or
But I gave home about over 75% of my money.
Uh-huh.
I had to give it home. I gave it home.
Was that a choice, or was that something that your
They
family...
expected me to.
They did.
Right. And then I would try to save and put into the bank, but my dad didn't trust banks because of the Depression years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just keep it in my cedar chest.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got married, I had $100 cash
Mm-hmm.
in the cedar chest.
Wow.
And that's all I had.
Now, $100 then, that was quite a bit of money, wasn't it?
Well, it seemed like a lot. But then at the very last, for some of the help, I went to the dime store and got sachets.
Mhm.
They were hooked together. They were tied together with a ribbon.
Mm-hmm.
So I cut them in two so I'd have something to give to each girl because I was running out of money.
Uh-huh.
And so the morning that we left for our wedding trip, then my mother, I heard her say in the hallway to my dad, Lois doesn't have any money. Would you please give her some money? So he went to my new husband and said, here's $5. And here's $5. And so I never told him that it was because I didn't have a dime.
Oh.
And then on the way, on our trip to California and like that, why he said, well, your folks give us $5, how shall we spend it? And we did. We must have got something, a souvenir of some kind.
That, yeah, something special to remember it by. And so once you got married, you didn't have to work outside the home?
Never. I didn't have to, but I chose. I guess I did pick up cucumbers for the rocks.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. We would walk behind a cucumber machine and pick them up and throw them into the machine, and then it separated them.
Really? I'll ask you a couple more and then we'll
I'll
break.
have to go and
Yeah.
get some dinner.
What were some of your favorite, did you have any favorite sports that you would play?
Well, I like to play ball.
Like softball?
I don't know. We never had any organized plays, but anything. But we played ball in school and had games and
What types of games?
kicked the stick. and
Kick
I
the
don't know
stick?
what the kick the. It would lean against the schoolhouse, and I don't know the rules of it. And somebody could go along and kick it, and then it did something for you. I don't know what it would have been.
What about hobbies? What did you enjoy?
Embroidery.
And we all can see that.
I like to embroidery. I would have liked to. I know you girls, when you were little, said if you don't crochet and knit, who's going to teach us?
True.
And I haven't learned that yet.
Yet. I like that. That means you'd still like to learn, right?
Well, maybe. I used to play the organ at school. The teacher kept me after school and told me she'd give me lessons, and she had me play as the program was.
Oh, really?
And I thought that was nice. And so when your mother got married, I was going to surprise everybody. I thought, well, Luann was in school. I'll just go and get some piano lessons, and then I'll be able to play for him. That was a desire I had, but I never did. So,
I'll ask one more question.
okay.
What vehicles do you remember owning, or your family owning?
1940 brand new car. I don't,
Really?
And we had, earlier than that, we had what they call a whippet. W-H-I-P-P-E-T. And I don't know what make that would have been other than it was called a whippet. Like a Ford, only it was that.
And do you remember what kind of brand new car it was?
Ship,
1940 Chevy. What color was it?
black.
Was it? Now, why did he choose black? Is that the only color they came in, or?
I don't know. I really don't.
And this was Great Grandpa Ammon that bought that. Now, 40, was that before the war?
Yes.
And so that's why the
We
money
came out here.
Oh, and he drove it out here.
Right, and then he sold it and got another one because he could make a little money on it.
There you go.
And I don't remember the colors of the next one. He did that a lot.
Really?
Because sometimes all he'd have to do is pay $100 difference.
Uh-huh. And
And
so
he
why
did
not?
a lot of horse trading and selling and buying horses and along with the farming.
Really?
Mhm.
You've got so many stories.
Oh, I don't think so.
I think so. So what was the first car that you and Grandpa owned together? Or what did...
Hudson, a 1941, I think, Hudson. He'll tell you, he'll correct it. It was a two-tone, it was really fancy, I thought.
Really?
I wanted to see this guy that drove this fancy car.
What colors were the two-tone?
If I remember, it was sort of a bluish gray, white or ivory. I'm not sure.
Well, I remember, I mean, occasionally we can see some of those old kinds of cars.
Right.
They're neat looking. I mean,
Well,
they used to
Grandpa
build
Dan-
cars with character.
We had another Hudson that we got brand new, and that was a green one. And then his brother wanted to buy it, so then we did like my dad. We went back east and got another one, new one, and I don't remember the dates and all of that.
Uh-huh.
But he eventually sold it
Uh-huh.
for like $25 or something, which now was a collector's
Oh.
item. And we brought it home in a grocery bag.
You brought what home? The $25?
Yes, I mean, we spent $25 on groceries. We needed groceries.
Oh, I see.
And then we had a Model A, too.
Oh, really?
A little Model A coupe.
You and Grandpa?
I mean, not that we owned it, but it had been my older brother's. And then my sister needed a car, Lola, and they took,
I'm assuming it had been Dale's, not Glenn's?
it
Or
had
was-
been Dale's.
Okay.
And then we bought it from him because he was always borrowing money. And then he was paying us with raw milk, gallon of raw milk and things like that. 'Cause
Uh-huh.
Grandpa had a way of saving his, and my brother, I don't know, he was investing in some other things sometimes.
Quote, unquote, investing?
So anyway.
All right, well, we'll get back
Yeah.
to this later. Okay. We now have had lunch. All the harvest people are out. So tell me about some pets that you had.
The only one I can think of is a Shetland pony.
Oh,
and
really?
And a riding horse,
What was the Shetland pony's name?
Dick.
And what did Dick...
He had a little cart. We could harness him up. We could ride him bareback or with a saddle. And I have the saddle. Yes.
You do?
Mm-hmm. Uncle Lynn took it to someone to have it repaired or restored or something.
Mm-hmm.
I had a saddle horse, which we had two. One was Floss, was her name, but I don't recall what the other one's name was. But the one I liked the best was the one I don't have the name right now, but I'd ride her as fast as I could.
You would?
And I thought the railroad track was a high bed, a high hill to go
Uh-huh.
over. And when I was there this summer, it wasn't as high as I thought. But she stumbled, and I fell off of her into a plowed field, and she stopped, and I got on her again.
And you'd ride her as fast, just like in
Well,
a
you-
gallop?
Just like people do today with cars, they want
Mhm.
to see how fast it'll go. Yes, a gallop. But most of the time I was decent with what I did. And we herd cattle along the road because when it rained, and it was during the Depression years, and the sun was so hot and it killed the trees and everything green,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have irrigation. So all that water went into ditches. So then we'd have to take our cattle and herd them for several hours along the road and along the railroad track. And this my cousin Juanita and I did. We lived a mile apart.
Mm-hmm.
So
A mile in those days was quite a ways.
it was. But she did their cattle and I did ours. And then they'd tell us, by the way of telling us when to come in, they'd turn the windmill off. And we could tell how when the windmill was turned off, it was the
was time to
the
come in.
time was up that we could bring them in.
Well, that was a good
Mm-hmm.
way to know. Now, the next question is about religious affiliations.
Okay,
And I know you grew up Mennonite, correct?
right.
did you go to the same church?
The Salem Mennonite Church in Shickley, and was baptized there.
When were you baptized?
I think I was 11. I do have a baptismal certificate, but I don't know where, I mean, it's in the drawer, but I don't remember the exact date. It does have it.
Excuse me. Okay, Salem Mennonite Church in Shickley, Nebraska. And you do have your baptismal certificate.
And when we were baptized, this is a strange custom that they had at the time. We were all to wear black.
Really? Why is that?
I often wondered, and my cousins wonder. But yes, we had to wear a black dress. And mine was crepe. I don't know if I still have it or not,
Uh-huh.
but that's what you had to do.
Was it a symbolism of something?
Yes, I'm sure. But, you see, why shouldn't it have been white?
Uh-huh.
Your sins are forgiven. Was it something to do with the sin?
Uh-huh.
And now we were baptized? I don't know. Would be interesting to ask, and I never thought about asking an older Mennonite minister.
Right.
But that's what they all know. I mean, the cousins talked about that.
Right.
So anyway.
Mommy,
What? Go to bed.
I'm going to see.
No.
Not
Okay. So, who were some of your best friends? What were the names of?
That's interesting because I guess some of my cousins, Edna, she's Edna Eichelberger Slegel now. She was one. As I was growing up,
Uh-huh.
that was it. Later, Merlin Stutzman, when we come to Oregon, she and I were good friends.
Uh-huh.
Now, even later still, now Norma Jean Lichty,
Uh-huh.
and I guess I just have a lot of friends now. You know,
Uh-huh.
if you would get all the phone calls.
And we know you get a lot of those. And, like, who, let's say in grade school, do you remember your best friend's name? Was it Edna? Would it have been Edna in grade school?
No, because I was the only girl I was the only older girl. Faye started to school in the first grade, but there was only from 9 to 10 students.
Really?
Uh-huh. And the boys, they were outnumbering, they
Oh,
were
yeah.
greater. There were 3 8th grade boys that I knew, and then maybe about 3 of the lower grade, and
So did any of those
they
boys
teased.
have a crush on you?
No.
Maybe they did, and that's why they teased. If you're the only girl.
There was one time a boy chased me. He was angry, and he chased me with the baseball bat. And I don't know what I must have said or done, but then the other ones that I wasn't sure that any of those 3 would ever stick up for a person. And he ran to the door and opened up the schoolhouse door so I could get away from him.
Well, that was nice.
That was very nice of him.
How scary. Nobody likes to be followed around by, chased by a baseball bat. Now on to some of the fun questions. What was your mom's best home remedy? Your mother's best?
I would just say they had always used castor oil.
Ooh, yuck.
It seemed to have the thought that it would cure anything. Watkins liniment, and that could be used for cattle or people. You could drink, it used to give the formula on the bottles for humans or for animals.
Yuck. And what would they use that for?
Well, if you had an upset stomach, you could put it in maybe a little bit of milk or something those are questions I probably would ask my brother, the oldest brother, because he would know that for sure, how.
Huh.
But basically, we didn't. Mercurochrome for your scratches.
What?
Mercurochrome.
How do you spell that?
C-H, I don't know how to spell it. We have one bottle in the bathroom from some of these elderly people that moved away because you can't buy it now. But just really, you'd soak your feet in hot water, or when I was sick with the flu or something, or a cold, they'd make poultice pads of fried onions and put it on your chest.
Oh. Fried onion poultice.
Fried onion poultice on your chest. They did a lot of home things, but I don't remember them all.
Huh. What did Saturday night used to always mean what?
Well, first of all, it meant Dad's in the tin tub. And we had a cook stove, just like Grandma has in the kitchen today.
Mm-hmm.
And because we had to carry all our water in, we would put the little ones in first. And so we got to bath in somebody else's water until it got to be maybe mid-age or something, and then you got to have clean water, and that's the way it went.
You kind of got to haul your own, though?
Well, we would always, somebody had a chore of keeping the water pail full of water and the reservoir full of water, because that would get hot too. But in the summertime, we had, this is not Saturday night, well, I guess in the summertime it would have been, but we had what they called a wind charger. Eventually it made some electricity for us.
Really?
Just one bulb light, but no water. And in that tower, my dad had put a 50-gallon barrel and filled it with water and put a shower head on, and then put some boards around it so we'd have some privacy. And then we would have our showers in the summertime.
And how old were you when there was the shower?
Oh, I suppose from 10 on. But it was just in the summertime.
Wow.
Because
So
they were harvesting and it was so terribly hot. Maybe if we had it, and I don't think it was much more before 10. And then sometimes what the boys would do was pour a cold bucket of water over the top for us.
I'm sure that it was
surprises.
quite appreciated,
I
huh?
know. But then also Saturday night meant we were going to read over the Sunday school lesson again. And be sure that we had all the potatoes cooked for Sunday dinner, and figured out what we were going to cook, because, you know, the women made the dinners and had lots of company.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they'd have 4 or 5 families, 20, 25 people.
Uh-huh. Wow. That's a lot of people for
A dinner.
even now.
Well, yes.
Now, if you were to finish the sentence, nothing tasted better than whose homemade what?
Well, for one thing, Mother's homemade bread and rolls.
You can probably about imagine that right now, can't you?
Right. And then in the summertime when the mulberries were ripe, she would mash up a few mulberries and put a lot of milk on it, and we dipped that over that fresh bread.
Oh.
And that was very yummy. And this year when we were back there a few weeks ago, there was some mulberries ripe, but they didn't quite taste like they used to taste.
Something about it, huh?
That's right.
The most formal event I ever attended was what?
A formal? Well, I tell you what, I don't remember any, but you know what? I'll tell you a story about Grandpa
Okay.
that told me. He called me. I don't think he needs that on there.
What, you getting a drink? That's okay.
He called Grandpa, your Grandpa Gerig, called me one day. It was the first year we were married. And he said, I'm going to take you out to dinner tonight, so you want to get ready. And that was so exciting, because even on our day that we went to get my engagement gift, we did have, it was exciting because we went to a dime store and ate dinner there,
Mhm.
hot turkey sandwich. So having your grandpa call me and say, we're gonna go eat out, it really meant formal. So I called my sister Lola and I said, what should I wear? And she just went along with this, just really nice, and she says, well, be sure you wear your gloves and your good black dress, and on and on. And we started out, and we went to Lola's house. And I sat and cried.
Oh.
Because I thought it was really going to be somewhere special.
And it was to Lola's house. Oh.
But that's why she went along with it, you know.
She's a Jenna pill.
Oh, it was funny.
Now, you mentioned you called Lola. When do you remember getting a phone for the first time?
Oh, it would have been when I was, I don't know, at least 6 years old.
Really?
I would think, because my first remembrance of the phone was my mother and her mother, Grandma, my grandmother, talking on the phone together in German.
Really?
Uh-huh. Then when I started to school, my father said, I overheard them saying, we're going to have to start talking English or German, because Lois is getting it all mixed up. So there I am.
And you know what? They say today, now, that it's so good to teach children 2 different languages because they have such soft minds. They can learn both.
Well, wie kommst kannst du nicht mich verstehen?
Okay?
That's how come you can't understand me.
Because you're speaking another language.
Or wie bist du now? And that's how are you now?
Uh-huh.
So, you know, it's a few things that will come to my mind. And I can make sentences and speak in that, but I have to take time to think.
Right. So both of your parents spoke German fluently.
My father was High German, they called it, and Mother was Low German.
And what's the difference between them?
Well, pronunciation probably. He would say an egg was Aya, and Grandma's would be Oya.
Huh. So did they disagree at all?
Oh, they disagreed sometimes very much, but not necessarily always on the language or anything. I mean, he just. Mother was very patient, and he, in those generations, he was the leader.
Uh-huh.
And what he said would go. So,
yeah.
And that's how they grew up. To be the, quote, in full control.
Yeah. What was the happiest phone call? The happiest phone call I ever received was from whom telling me what?
Oh, that would be hard to phone call.
Or just a really happy phone call. One that you can remember, that's maybe something that...
When Grandpa called and asked me for a date, maybe.
Ah.
He called me.
Uh-huh.
And I said, you know, I went.
And where did you go?
We went to Sweet Home Church, Sweet Home for all Mennonite churches had once a year a literary. And when we got there, one of his cousin's wives, Naoma, well, I don't know if they were married then, but she said, how long has this been going on? It was our first date. So I guess they thought it was meant to be.
I guess. And so what went on at a literary?
Oh, they'd have a program and fun things they had games, like one time my cousin, they would blindfold somebody and they'd say, we the 3 honorable judges demand honesty for an answer. Whom do you love? And they would have everybody out in another room. And my cousin, Luke Berkey, was dating a lady up at Hubbard. And he did later marry Conrad, but this had to be a different Conrad girl.
Uh-huh.
Juanita was her name. And he sat there, because we, the three honorable judges, they would have to sit between the judges, you know, and then he said, well, do I have to tell? And they said, yes, we demand honesty for an answer. And what it really was is all he had to say was honesty. Whom do you love? And he said, finally, Juanita Conrad. And then they told him, well, all you had to do was answer honesty. So, you know, they just had fun things like that.
How fun. It's kind of like
And
our old MYF games.
I would suppose that would, you know, be that way. Now, we had, they did kind of have a program
Uh-huh.
sometimes, you know, but each, whether it was a committee or what, but that's what we really thought was fun to come when we came to Oregon, was to go to the literaries.
So they didn't do literaries in Nebraska?
No, they didn't do anything, but they had parties.
What kind of parties?
Well, they had some, they called dance parties,
Heaven
but they
forbid.
called them swing games. That's what they called them. And I was just barely old enough when I got to go about twice to that kind of a party.
Uh-huh.
And then they changed it to, a singing or something like that, and had it more a spiritual emphasis.
Uh-huh.
But while we were growing up, Grandpa would have, my dad would have, invite them to the barn. The haymow had been an old dance floor.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And
So they had their barn dance up there.
And he would let them
He
do
would
that?
let them do that.
How fun.
But there was an oversized lady, single lady that came. And I remember Mother was getting the house ready, but the young people weren't going to come in. However, she always wanted to be clean. But the linoleum was all worn out in the doorway, and it had just a slight little, it must have been built on. The kitchen must have been. So it was a little, wasn't a step, but it was kind of like a step. That got a lot of traffic. So there was a hole in the linoleum, and Mother just put a rug over it, a washed little rag rug. But this lady came in then, so Mother's efforts were blessed in that way. She did come in, but because she was too heavy to get through the haymow door,
Oh,
she couldn't get through.
that's
Yeah,
sad.
sorry. Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite childhood game of make-believe? What did you like to?
Well, I hardly know. I liked to play house,
Uh-huh.
and I had a playhouse. It was an old car body with the windows out, but you could still do the cranking, but all the lining and everything was out. We'd make our mud pies and put them on top to bake. And that was make-believe. I don't know if that's what you call it.
Oh,
We
I
didn't get to
see.
play a lot. But we made playhouses in our grandpa's orchard when we'd go visit by just putting out twigs to make a room,
Mm-hmm.
and then go to her pile of broken dishes and maybe stove lids, and that was our stove. We made believe about that.
So you say a pile of broken dishes. Was
Well,
it like a
kinda
garbage?
junk- yes. Grandma had a place out in the orchard where she would
Throw the things that couldn't be burnt in the
Yeah,
stove
right.
type stuff.
Mhm. We thought that was fun, and then we, of course, had dolls. And my
Mhm.
cousin Edna was 3 years older than I. She was 16, and I wanted to play dolls at 13, yeah.
Uh-huh.
13-year-old girls today probably wouldn't. But she played doll with me, and that was fun. So,
Well, I think that girls today grow up too fast.
they do. They really do.
It's really sad, and that they don't stay kids.
And they don't allow them to have make-believe things. You know, like they see all the television advertisements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Instead of just, okay, just go out and play in the fields, and what can you do? One of my favorite smells is what? It brings back memories of what?
I wonder what that is. Which one is that? 11. Here's my number 11 slip of paper. Let's see what I have down
Thought
there.
I had 7, but it could be 11.
Hmm?
I thought I have 7 as the number, but it could be.
Maybe not.
7's up on the top right there. Right there.
Okay. Okay, well, my grandmother had a kerosene stove. And today you may not think that the smell of oil burning like that
Mm-hmm.
would be a fragrance. But when she had it going, it was still, how would I say, it meant she was either frying chicken, it was the best fried chicken, and the combination of smells
Mm-hmm.
did that, to me. It was really good. But anytime we seldom had desserts.
Really?
It was only on special occasions that we had desserts.
Do you know why that was?
Because we didn't have sugar, we didn't have the money. When one of my sisters were born, we did have a hired girl at that time, and she made lists out of things for the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandpa went over the list. My dad went over the list and said, we don't need this and we don't need that. How had she made out with, I don't know, but he didn't have the money to buy it.
Hmm.
So he had to
Wow.
make do. I remember the first dessert that I recall was my brother Dale made what they call caramel dumplings. And he made it in the black iron skillet, and it had this brown caramel pudding-like stuff around it. It was made with water mostly, and with the brown sugar and things.
Mm-hmm. Was it
Probably like a biscuit.
like a doughy type thing?
Uh-huh, right. I do have the recipe somewhere.
I might have to pull it out and try it.
No, I thought of that.
That would be neat to have. You know?
It would.
Let's see. The neighbors would all come to help when what?
Oh, when there was thrashing and haying, and someone was sick, and when they were sick, they'd come in, and it was harvest time. A whole group of men would come together and do the harvesting for them.
Really?
But the thrashing was a steam engine, and they'd come in, and it would be like the steam engine on a train. And the whistle, they never did blow it enough for us to satisfy us. So we enjoyed that.
Now, when you say when someone was sick,
Well,
what?
someone would maybe get hurt, and they were laid up for a while. And just right now, Grandpa Troyer had, this wasn't necessarily when he was sick, although he had had a stroke. And he couldn't really do as much anymore, but our parents got together and said that we grandchildren were supposed to go and help. It was harvest time, and it's kind of like a corn, but it is small corn ears, and it was called Milo. And so a wind came along and knocked a lot of it down.
Mm.
So they had the grandchildren come in. Couldn't they come and pick up those heads and put them in, and so grandpas could sell that? And I don't know how old I was, but my cousin Donald Eichelberger, who was just next to me by 1 year, we decided it was too hot and too hard work. So when this was maybe a half a mile down the row, we decided it was much cooler to sit under the railroad bridge and watch the others work. See, I wasn't always obedient.
And then what happened
Then
when
we
you got
said,
fed up?
Grandpa this is hard work. Grandpa would better have some nice lunch for us. But we didn't think they could because of not being able to buy things. I don't know just how this blends together, but in the meantime, Grandpa did go to town. I still would like to taste boughten cinnamon rolls in a package with minced ham. That's what he brought home, and it was delicious.
Did you ever get found out that you had sat under the...
Oh yeah, we tell the story.
And did you get in trouble?
I don't remember that we did.
So how old were you probably? Maybe, like, were you in grade school at the time, or were you, like, old enough to know better?
Well, if I remember it like this, I think I would have been old enough to know better, but it might have been like 8, 9.
Well, Alyssa's age.
Because the others were older than we were,
Mhm.
and they're the ones that
Yeah.
say that. Maybe I was younger. But it's just a story.
But they're neat. One thing I learned to do that I never thought I would was what?
Which number is that?
That's 9.
You want to just turn it off for a minute? 'Cause I'm
Sure.
gonna cough. I didn't realize that I learned to husk corn, and when I was growing up, my brothers would do it. But then, because I had gone to short-term and all this, I knew that
What do
I
you mean?
accepted it then. When I went to short-term Bible study, then is when I climaxed my realization that I was to be my father's helper. But before that, I drove a team of horses and a wagon
Mm-hmm.
and would go out in the morning and shuck corn because my brothers were gone. One brother was married, the other was in Oregon. And Dad was out dealing horses, buying and selling horses. And I asked Dale whether this is, I said, I don't want to exaggerate, but did we have 300 acres of corn that year? And he showed me, he drove me around to all the fields. And he said, yes, you're right. And that's what we did, 300 acres of, and we had,
And you shucked it all by hand?
yes, they had some kind of a hook on your, that had a strap around here, and you would take it, and then you'd husk it off, and then you took the hard corn and tossed it in the wagon.
Now,
And
when you mean shuck, you mean you took all the green off.
Right.
It wasn't, oh my goodness.
By that time then, it was dried though.
Oh,
You know, it was drying up, and so it was more brittle, so it was a little easier to take care of, you know, to get off of there rather than the green. But,
wow. That's a lot of corn. How long did that take you?
oh, it took several months because we did, I would get a wagon load in the morning and a wagon in the afternoon. And when I'd start in the morning, it would be really cold in the fall. See, that's when it would happen. My gloves would get so wet from the frost, and then, you know, they were cold, and then they would dry from the sun. Mother would go out with me sometimes and said, well, I'm going to help you. And she did. We did. But, you know, it was just part of our way of life. And so I remember farming with Dad in that way, and then also plowing. And but then later, when we came to Oregon, I didn't want to. He wanted me to do carpenter work, and I said, You know, I didn't. That was for women not to do.
Right.
I didn't want to do it, so I didn't want anybody to know it. But first of all, we did all this with dresses on, you remember? But we did, first of all, made some turkey nests for my dad's only brother who had raised turkeys, and he made them. So then, after that, Dad started building houses. And we built them from scratch, and I helped him. So that's how I worked. And but Dad would often tell me, he said, you know, Lois, I know you don't like this, but someday you're going to be glad when you have a home of your own. And you know, that was a nice lesson and a nice, kind way of saying, and I really appreciate what he taught me during that.
So, why do you think, you keep saying that you realized that you were going to be your dad's helper. Why, explain what you mean by that.
Well, see, my little brother, my big brothers were older.
Right.
Mother had 9 children, and I was exactly in the middle. Well, then finally, they had a little boy just right after I was born. I mean, 9, I don't know whether it's 12, 13 months or something. So Dad would have had a boy to work with.
Mhm.
And he didn't have a boy at home anymore.
Mhm.
So I knew that one of us girls, in those days, the girls went out and worked, unless you had a brother.
Mhm.
And then I used to ask, even when I worked in the field, I'd say, well, God, why didn't you let me die instead of my brother, because my dad really needed a boy. That was a very selfish prayer. But then I wouldn't have to know the world today, and I'd be in heaven with you, things like that. You just, how would a,
11-year-old.
right, exactly,
Wow.
think. But I just, again, it goes back to death and dying, and I don't know whether it has any connection, but in the later years, back in late 70s or early 80s, I had taken Grandma out to pick blackberries.
Mhm.
And Dad came along and he said, I'd like to have this kind of attention too. And he said, I'd like to be out there with you. So, okay, he came out, and while we were there, Mother had been kind of ill, and he said, well, I'm going to help Mama into the pickup. She can't be on her feet too long. I'm going to help her in the pickup, and but you stay here. I want to tell you something. Something a man should have said, and wait sometimes a whole lifetime to tell you. And I thought, uh-oh. I was in for a little sermonette again. Because whenever any of us had been baptized or had made this decision to become, in those days it was more like a member of the church
Mhm.
rather than a spiritual experience, it seemed.
Mhm.
Mine came at 16, and yet I was baptized at 11. But the thing is, then he said, he took hold of my hands and looked me in the face, and he said, Lois, I love you. And that's all he said.
And he'd never told you that before?
Well, I don't suppose, because we didn't say I love you to each other, but I felt loved.
Mhm.
I didn't ever feel like I wasn't loved by anything, or even, I guess I just over and over wonder whether he thought that he too thought that my brother, he would have liked to have my little brother live rather than the girl. But it hasn't made me bitter. But I've come to that right or wrong conclusion. There was something about that.
You had a bond with your dad that none of your sisters
No.
shared.
Mm-mm.
And so you probably knew him better than almost any other sibling. Would you feel that way?
Well, the boys and he had it.
Right.
And the girls just in a different way.
Mhm.
But, I mean, my younger sisters, or my older sister, she had to work hard too.
Well, an older sister
Right.
gets a lot of responsibility.
Right. And so she, I don't know whether it was 17 or 18 when she got married. So see, she wasn't really ready for it either.
But didn't girls get married rather young
Oh yeah,
in those days?
right.
Because, I mean, I know,
What else was there to do?
yeah, you didn't finish school.
That's right. You did.
The best package I ever received in the mail contained what?
What would that have been?
Number 10, I think.
Number 10? Wonder if I have previously made a note on that.
Or is there anything that you can
Well,
think
and when a child, we never got any packages
of? Right.
as a child. The only, maybe a package would have been at Christmas time from my school teacher. She gave me a book.
Neat. Do you
That's
remember
the
the
only
name of the
book.
book?
Oh yes, it's The Mystery of the Lost Key, but I can't remember. No, this is the first time this has happened that I never could. Penny Nichols and the Mystery of the Lost Key. That was the only book I owned, ever. So that was very special.
Do you still have it?
Yes, I do.
I bet you took very good care of it.
I don't know, but I still have it, you know.
That's
It was
great.
something that we didn't have, is a lot of books. In fact, our bookcase was a bookcase that was clear up at the ceiling. You speaking of you being in this new little mobile home.
Old.
Old, well, you just can, all you have to do is make a shelf up at the ceiling,
Mhm.
and then you put your books up there.
Mhm.
And then that won't be in the way. And if you want them, you can go climb on the bench behind the table and then onto the table, and then you can get your books out. So you know children aren't necessarily going to get reference books and things like that
Right.
down. But that was my dad's bookcases.
Well,
That was, we just lived in a teeny tiny house,
yeah.
really.
And you know, having it up high was probably a better place to store them because heat rises,
Right.
and they wouldn't have gotten as damp
That's
as
true.
had they been stored down near the floor.
Right.
So
That's
not
very
only
true.
were they out of the way, but they did probably get
Mhm.
last longer. My favorite keepsake handed down in the family is what?
Well, I would say one of them would be that little glass shoe.
Where did it come from?
It came from my Aunt Ellen, who died at 18,
What did she die of?
measles.
Oh, that's the one that was told not to go to the party
Right.
and went anyway.
And
And
but-
did she give it to you?
no, she did not, but years and years before we ever moved to Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
before 1940, well, then I had it. And some of these little things that I brought, you know, I really actually didn't move out of my room or out of the house. I just stayed in Oregon then, while my folks would go back and forth. And whatever little keepsakes I had, I brought along. And so that was handed down to me, yes. But there was that little stove, that little green stove that is missing the drawer and the oven door. I have one of them. It might be in the attic on the floor where I brought it downstairs so that I wouldn't lose it up in the attic now. But that we got for Christmas one year. And then one year there was a toy store burned, and my uncle and my dad went there and salvaged some toys that we could use. And mine was a little blue cardboard cupboard, and the whole end was scorched brown, but it was blue, and it had doors. And I don't know what happened to it, but I do remember having that.
It survived, the cardboard survived a fire?
Right. Well, it just depending on where it was, evidently.
Right.
Right.
And it was a toy store that had burned?
Uh-huh. Or a general store, maybe. It was where toys had been kept, anyway. 10. Back on number 10.
Uh-huh.
The best things that I remember eating or having eaten and never thought I would like
Uh-huh.
was hermit cookies.
Oh.
Because I disliked any kind of raisins in anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then for those 6 weeks that I was at Heston College, I was so lonesome. And my mother made some hermit cookies, but she cooked the raisins.
Mm-hmm.
And she made these cookies, and don't you know, they were the best cookies I ever ate.
I bet they were. So she
That
sent
would have been a
them-
package in the mail.
There you go.
Right.
So she, were they in Oregon or in Nebraska when you,
That was in Nebraska.
so they were sent in the mail
Mm-hmm.
all the way from there.
But,
Do you have pictures of yourself at Heston at the college?
oh, I really have.
He's got pictures of everything, I think.
I've got a book where, a Heston College book where I am in.
Really?
Hmm. But due to the fact that I have a few photo albums and a few scrapbooks now, it has taken the back. It's back on the back shelf.
Just a few scrapbooks.
You'll have to count them someday.
I probably will. My best homemade birthday cake ever was what?
Honey, we did never have a birthday cake until I was older.
How old is older?
If, I don't even recall, but if I got any, it would have been about 19.
Wow.
Because we had, in later years, Jell-O was a real special treat. Because my mother remembers when tapioca was a thing manufactured. Well, Jell-O was equal to that.
Uh-huh.
And so, Mother was sick, and we had, just to tell you how much we liked Jell-O, is what I'm meaning, that the only way we could keep our things from getting sour, because we didn't have refrigerators in those days, was a windmill would pump from the windmill to the stock tank. In between, there was some people had real nice wooden tanks in their wash houses. Ours happened to be like a old barrel or something, and it was piped in and piped out. So everything we had, we'd put in there, but sealed in jars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one time my mother was sick, and somebody brought her some Jell-O, and it was clear moldy. It was on the bottom, and it had mold on top. So I scraped it off. I wanted to have Jell-O. I thought it just got mold on top. I didn't swallow that bite.
Oh, you didn't?
No,
Took
but-
one bite and decided that it was
Yes.
not good.
But then in later years, then Mother would make Jell-O for us for birthdays with bananas in it. And that was a treat.
So, was the reason you didn't have birthday cakes just because of the,
Maybe we had them, and why wouldn't I remember them? But I imagine they just didn't do the baking like we do today, are known to do today.
right.
They didn't have the sugar and things.